Hello, my name is Super Sea Goblin, and welcome to this review of the Flysimware Cessna 441 Conquest II. This product has been out for quite a while now and is available for Flight Simulator X, Service Pack 2 or Acceleration, Steam Edition, as well as Prepare 3D across all three versions. Price is about $34.99 US or your regional equivalent. The developer's website is flysimware.com. I will link it in the description down below. Single purchase required, covers everything, so there's no extra license or anything else required to use it in Prepare 3D. One purchase covers everything. The download itself, or the airplane itself, comes with a 29-page manual. It comes with 5 repaints total, as well as a repaint kit available from the developer's website itself. Now, Flysimware have been around for quite a while. The stuff they started out with was a bit strange. They only sort of recently moved into actual airplanes. So this is actually the first offering of them that I would consider to be noteworthy, although that sounds a little bit more negative than I actually mean it. However, I also have to say that I think personally that Flysimware products, especially the more recent ones, are underrated. They're not talked about enough because I think they're actually really good. So we're going to do that today. Starting out with the exterior, you can see it looks pretty good. It's modeled very nicely. There's lots of detail in the model. The texture work is pretty good. The animations are pretty good. All the standard animations are there. You can already see we have some static elements, which I'll talk about here in a second as we pan around the model itself. Now, talking a little bit about the airplane, Cessna Conquest, pretty much Cessna's answer or Cessna's idea of a King Air, so it's kind of a utility/business turboprop airplane with a couple differences here and there, mainly the engines being something entirely different in the way that they function and the way that they operate, which is also, in my opinion now, it's probably the most complex thing about this airplane. It's just the way you start and operate the engines. Everything else is relatively simple. It's a Cessna. There's not really too many surprises. It's not, it's not the most complex airplane in the world, but it's a very nice rendition of this aircraft. It looks very nice. It sounds very nice. It sounds like it should. Which is to say that these Garrett engines actually sound pretty terrible, but it's true to the real airplane, so don't complain about that. Everything is modeled correctly, everything is modeled nicely. As I said, the textures look pretty good. This is one of the 5 repaints here. And I think it would be best if we go over the different pop-ups first, simply because those control the static elements on the outside of the airplane. So the first pop-up that you will likely open, Shift 1, is this one, which is the standard Hangar, which gives you the options to repan refuel the airplane. It gives you an option to open the Flight Simulator map screen, the map window. It also gives you an option to open your ATC window as well as the GPS. Talking about the GPS, the airplane comes with 2 different panels, which I will show you in a second. First one is a default, well, not default, but based upon the default GNS 530 done by Flysimware themselves, which has a couple nice features. The other option is the Flight 1 GTN 750. So you can choose that, which means in total, so you have 5 repaints, you have 2 versions, so you have pretty much 10 different airplanes. All the panel versions come with the Reality XP weather radar. However, the problem is that I don't use that because I'm using FSX Steam Edition. And FSX Steam Edition and Reality XP stuff don't go well along nicely together, unfortunately. So excuse me for not having an actual working weather radar. It just doesn't work in my sim. Coming over to the right side of this panel, you have a facility to control the lights, pretty much all of the interior lights and the wing lights. As well as down here you have a system start option, so you can pre-select the panel state that you'd like. You can either do all systems off, which turns all the batteries and all the switches off, and you have a ready to start, which basically turns on the battery and the lights and everything, so you basically just have to start the engines. Kneeboard pretty much does what it says. It opens Flight Simulator kneeboard. Pretty self-explanatory. The airplane, as you can see, comes with a full suite of checklists. Just complete set normal and abnormal procedures. Pretty good. Thumbs up for that. As well as references, which, in addition to the manual, decent coverage of manuals, in my opinion. Down here, the aircraft options. If you click that, it will show you the airplane configurator, I think, is what you would call that, which allows you to toggle on and off a couple things and allows you to do a couple things. Primarily, it allows you to toggle on and off, the wheel chocks, the engine covers, as well as letting you open and close the doors. As you can see, they open in a very cool fashion. They also allow you to load and unload luggage, which is stored in the front of the nose of the airplane. I'll show you that in a second. As well as loading and unloading the pilot and the co-pilot, and also giving them fancy headsets and fancy shades if you so desire, but you can obviously turn those off if you wish. Below the pilots, you can have a choice of 2 propellers. Currently loaded is the newer Macaulay scimitar style prop, and below that is the older style hard cell propeller, a little bit wider. The propellers don't have a difference, or they don't make a difference as far as the sound is concerned or the flight behavior of the airplane is concerned, but, you know, for realism's sake, they're a model, so if the particular airplane you want to fly has one of the 2, you just select that. Down here, excuse me, you can open and close the luggage compartments, and as you can see, you can also see the luggage inside that luggage compartment, which means you can toggle it on and off. Pretty simple stuff. Very nicely done. Not really much to say about that. The animations are very good. The animation quality is pretty good. It's all really very smooth. It's all very nicely animated, so not really much to say. And you can also do the sunshades, which, you know, if you don't want to get your cockpit too hot in the summer, if you have it parked outside on the ramp, pretty cool, pretty nice. Below that, you have your left and right tank indicator. It shows you your fuel in pounds, I think. Yes, it does, in pounds. As well as what engine feeds, or what tank feeds what engine. I will show you why in a second, as well as that your start locks are currently engaged. And you can also actually, as you can see here, if you mouse over and you turn the mouse wheel, you can turn the propeller. Not really sure what this is for. Doesn't really say in the manual, but it's a cool little feature. Now, talking a little bit about the engines earlier, the Cessna family of turboprops, a lot of the Cessna turboprops use a Garrett turboprop engines, which are significantly different from the standard King Air PT6 that you may or may not be familiar with, in that they are a what's called geared turboprop. I'm not going to go into too much technical detail as to what that means and why that is a different thing. However, what is important to note is that the start procedure for this airplane is a little bit different than you would be used to. Those people that have ever flown the PMDG J41 will know what I'm talking about when I tell you about start locks and stop locks and all that fun stuff. But you can see right now the start locks are locked. That's good. They need to be locked for the start, and I will go over how this functions basically as soon as we actually start the airplane up. For now, let's hop into the inside. It's the same story here. Good quality modeling, good quality texturing. I will say right now though that I wish Flysimware would improve their modeling and texture work a little bit, because their stuff has potential. Their stuff has a lot of potential if they can sort these tiny quality issues out. Their stuff looks good to me. I am perfectly happy with the way it looks, but I'm also a person that prefers substance over style. So if you expect Carinator level awesomeness in terms of the visuals, you don't get that. However, you also don't get the systems in the Carinator, so there's that. The cockpit itself, it's a fairly simple layout. As you can see, it's a twin Cessna. There's not really much going on. There's no particular overhead except for the light switches. Every switch in here has its own sound. I think nearly every switch has its own sound. Everything is nicely animated, smoothly animated. Texture work, as I said, is pretty good. The layout of the panel itself is pretty decent. If you've ever seen pictures of a real 441, you will know that this is actually pretty similar to what the real airplane is. Looking around here, not really much you can do. The texture work and modeling on those seats, I mean, look at this. This looks like plastic wrapping. I'm not really sure. This looks a bit odd to me. This is bland, but yeah, you can extend your armrests if you want to, if you so desire. You can open and close that door. As you can see, you have a couple manuals here. You can't really do anything with these. However, what you can do, as we move into the cabin, you can open these little drawers here, which give you a table for once, which folds out very nicely, so your passengers can work. And it will also give you 2 drink holders for your Starbucks, I guess, or random other coffee or soda brand of non-description. And when you're done, you can just close these. That's pretty much it as far as the cabin goes. There's light switches here on the top, which actually illuminate their respective seats that they're assigned to when you toggle them on. However, these obviously don't work for now because the battery is not turned on. Fasten seatbelt signs and no smoking signs also illuminate as soon as the battery is turned on and you actually illuminate them. And that's pretty much it as far as the cabin and its animation goes. Again, pretty well modeled, not really much to say about it. It looks reasonable, it looks adequate, it looks nice. As I said, it could use a better texture work. It's mostly actually texture work. Coming to think of it, the model quality of stuff is actually pretty good. It's mostly texture work that could use a little bit of work, but, you know, whatever. That's just the way it is. Now, talking a little bit about the layout some more. As I said, there's two panel versions. There's a 750 version, and there's this version which we're using right now. There's no option to use the 650 and 750, or two 750s or two 650s, unfortunately. So a single 750 is what you get. That's all you get. And other than that, I mean, you know, it would replace these units here, so the audio panel, the GPS, and the transponder, and the weather radar, which, as I said, is not functional, unfortunately. That's pretty much the only thing that's not functional in this airplane right now. Everything else works. Autopilot, everything works, everything functions. Now, not really much else to say about this stuff here, other than, oh yeah, you also have your sun visors that you can animate if you so desire, if you so wish. Other than that, I think it would be a good time to actually just start the airplane up and yeah, start talking about systems a little bit more. So I will mute myself while I run you through the startup, and I will explain what I've done after the engines are running. So we're actually gonna do that now. So I will talk to you in a second. Alright, I'm back. Now, as number 2 engine starting up, you can probably tell it's pretty loud in here. So that's why my simulator is quite quiet, because these engines are actually pretty loud. So, apologies for that. Now, completing the startup here, I can actually reset that back to what it should be, as well as reset and turn on the generators, as well as the avionics and that stuff. So we actually have everything starting to boot up here. So, start procedure for this airplane is a little bit different than what you would normally be used to, because, again, this is a geared turboprop. So, the way this thing actually operates and works is, first of all, you make sure your stop locks or your start locks are locked. After that, you can move your condition levers to whatever your starting position would be. Not actually the takeoff position, but the start and taxi as it's laid out here. Which is what you do for a geared turboprop, you know? Which also means that when you actually go for takeoff, you will move these all the way forward, which you don't do on a PT6, but that's just one of those quirks. Then, other than that, you just select left or right starter, and you hit the start button, and the thing will do everything for you. There's an option for manual start, which is these two red switches here, but we'll talk about these a little bit more in detail. Now, as you can hear, as I said, it's pretty loud in here, so I'm actually going to try and turn the simulator volume down a little bit. Bear with me. Let's turn it down to, like, 6. So I hope that's a little bit more quiet and a little bit more audible. Alright, so we can actually start going through the system. So we start at the very top. Over here you have your cabin lights or your cockpit lights, which is illuminate the cockpit, as you would have guessed. Now that batteries on these actually work. You have your standby whiskey compass. Over here you have your annunciator panel. Again, relatively simple stuff, relatively easy to understand. In the middle here you have an annunciator test button. Illuminates everything that needs to be illuminated. As you can see, everything lights up nice and nicey. Yeah, if your left and right engine fire, don't press these because they will actually shut the engine down. letting you know right now, don't push these unless you want the engines to shut down. Over here you have your master warning reset, you have your DG fast direct, you have your markers over here. The general layout, I mean, you can see it's a standard 6-pack, it's a standard engine instruments. There's the autopilot down here. There's also your DME over here, which you can select what you want. You can also do your knots and you can switch that around between knots, minutes, and off, and you can also test it. So, as I said, everything in here is pretty much functional. Same as the clock over here. You can switch through the different modes for the clock and do everything you want. You have a stopwatch in here as well, which you can turn on and off, obviously. Coming down here, continuing with the panel layout. Right now, over here you have your turn indicator, you have your instrument air, you have your outside air temperature, your prop de-ice, left and right. This is actually a de-iced airplane. This little instrument here is your volt and amps, your volts and amps, and they will actually change as far as I know if you toggle stuff on and off. Actually, unfortunately they don't. Well, kind of expected the load to change a little bit, but guess it doesn't. Anyway. These over here control your cockpit lights. Your instrument panel light switch is this one over here, and as you can see, as you turn it on, it's pretty bright and shiny. However, I have to say, the way the lights is done, I like. That's pretty nice, actually. That's pretty cool. I'm a fan of that. I actually like that. Continuing over here, you have your left and right fuel computer, which you would flip up and press the button if you want to do a manual engine start. We've pretty much done an automatic quote-unquote engine start, but if you were to do a manual start, you can do these. Circuit breakers, not simulated. Manual start 10% and start motor left-right, not simulated either, unfortunately. Below that, the white switches here turn on all your lights. So it's your landing lights, taxi lights, navigation lights, strobe lights, whatever you wish. And anti-collision is actually the strobe light. This airplane does not have a beacon. Now, important point here, first major important point, the fuel crossfeed system. Let me actually get you a better look at this. Because this, at first glance, looks a little bit weird when you consider where the white line is. This doesn't really make a lot of sense for now. However, do consider that this works in a Y configuration. Which means that, if for example you set this to the left-hand engine, it will feed both engines from the right tank. Same goes if you do this, it will feed both engines from the left-hand tank. They only forgot to paint in another arrow, basically. But this works in a Y configuration. This is also visible over here. When you turn the engines left and right, you can actually see the fuel layout changing here, indicating what crossfeed is active, and you also have the in-transit light come on and off. This took me a moment to figure out, but it's actually explained in the manual. But if you're one of those people that doesn't read manuals like I am, this might be confusing at first. Continuing down here, you have your ignition override switches. Pretty self-explanatory. You have your generator left and right. You have your two batteries. You have your engine starter. You have your engine stop, which we'll talk about after we land again. You have your fuel boost, either main or aux pumps or off. You have your torque EGT limiter, either on auto or on manual, I think. And down here you have your whole anti-ice, engine inlets, pilot static, stall vane, windshield, surface, all that good stuff, as well as the gyro for the EAD and the avionics buses, left and right. Conversely, on the right side, nothing. Yeah, just have your little your hops meter down here, and none of this actually functions, unfortunately. None of the circuit breakers or anything is simulated. Coming over here, you have your alternate and static. You have your alternate static source switch. Should your pilot become blocked, this here is the parking brake. And as you can see, when you pull it, the pedals animate, and you also have this nice little ratchet sound, basically, when you pull it. The yoke can obviously be hidden by clicking on the little Conquest logo, and then you click on the red flag if you want to return the yoke. Altitude alert. I mean, pretty self-explanatory how this functions. You just use your mouse wheel and you turn in whatever altitude you wish. Vertical speed hold, vertical speed indicator, sorry, radio altimeter, and your altitude. Down here you have the autopilot mode panel. This selects the modes for the autopilot. However, the autopilot main switch, or the autopilot yaw damper main switch, is somewhere else in this airplane. This is a bit weird in terms of layout, but we'll get to that. Down here you have your gear. You can silence the gear horn by pressing this button. You have your standard gear lever, Obviously, you have your lights, your indicating lights, and over here you have an alternate gear release. Excuse me, or an emergency gear release. Again, pretty standard stuff. Over here, the Avionics, standard audio panel, standard GPS, standard transponder. Non-functioning weather radar, your NAVCOM 2, and your ADF. Co-pilot side instruments, again, also pretty self-explanatory. You can see there's not a whole lot here to talk about. It's a simple Cessna airplane, but I tried to do my best to ramble a long time about something. Over here you have your cabin pressure, your cabin rate, as well as the pressure differential and the cabin rate climb and descent. Over here you have the flaps, and it will even tell you at what speeds you can extend and retract these, which I find very convenient and useful. So, yes. Little arrow moving down as well as you move the flaps. Then next to that we have the temperature selector for the cabin. Drag your mouse to select the temperature. Over here you have your cabin blowers on and off, as well as your cabin heat, cool or heat. These don't really do anything. It's just one of those, you know, visual things. I mean, that's actually something that I like to play with because I like to simulate that stuff. So I'm like, okay, I appreciate that they've modeled this. Whether it's actually working or not, or whether it actually changes anything on the panel, doesn't really matter to me as long as it's modeled and as long as it's there and you can actually interact with it. I just like buttons that I can click, basically. Seatbelt switch over here, which turns on and off the seatbelt sign. Oxygen sign, which turns off the on and off the no smoking sign, because you know what happens when you mix pure oxygen and an open flame, or even as much as a cigarette. You know what happens. So oxy sign means oxygen is deployed to the engine, or is deployed to the cabin, so please stop smoking. Cigarette heater, unfortunately not modeled. You have to remember that this airplane comes from a time where smoking on an aircraft was still a thing. This is 70s, so you will see stuff like that. And you have your door light down here, which illuminates the door. Other than that, coming down here, you obviously have your trim, as well as your power lever and your condition lever. Although the condition lever also directly controls the prop RPM on this airplane. Which we'll talk about a little bit more when we're done with this. Down here you have your prop sync button, or your prop sync switch. You can turn that on and off. You cannot adjust the phase, unfortunately, although I don't think there's any add-on which you can actually adjust the phase of the actual prop sync. Down here you have your aileron, your roll trim, as well as your, elevator trim, and there you have your rudder trim over here. Here is the Autopilot main switch. So you can actually test that. I don't think it actually does anything when you test it. It doesn't give you any indication or anything like that, unfortunately. As well as the Autopilot yaw damper main switch. So you can either turn on just the yaw damper, or you can turn on the combination of Autopilot and yaw damper. As well as a wing leveler switch, which you can press in and out. So this will automatically tell the airplane to go to a wing level mode when you push it in, as well as your rudder trim, your rudder trim to go left and right. And over here you can control your vertical speed on the Autopilot. It will actually tell you your feet per minute. So there's no direct vertical speed control over here anywhere. You do that over here, which is a little bit inconvenient. So you have to always, when you're flying along, you always have to look down and reach down and change your vertical speed. But that's just what it is with an older airplane like this. There's no integrated glass cockpit or anything like that that does it for you. But they have their charm, so not going to complain about that too much. Coming down below that, you have the cabin pressure dump valve over here, which, if you want to, over here you have your cabin vent, your cabin ventilation, so it doesn't get too hot and sticky. Here, with this dial, you can set the cruise altitude you're flying at, and respectively the cabin pressure you want to be at, as well as the rate of the cabin pressure, so the little vertical speed indicator here, which sets your cabin rate. So this knob basically controls this over here, if you will, by proxy. And last but not least, down here we have the source for the cabin pressurization, either left engine, right engine, or emergency. Left and right, and both. So that's from both engines, so the cabin actually starts getting pressurized. That's pretty much it. That pretty much covers all of the, I guess, all of the systems of this airplane. I mean, there's no really much point to talking about the GPS here, because, I mean, the only real difference from this GPS to the default GPS is that you have a VNAV functionality. And if you've watched my GTN 750 review, then you will know how this works. Shameless plugging. However, I will say that I like the little transitions they have if you switch from CDI, or if you switch your CDI from GPS to relog. They have a nice little transition here. So, in general, there's a couple of very nice things in this airplane that just feel and look nice. The sounds is one of them. The animations is one of them. The feedback you get, just the ambient. When you turn on the battery, you hear the battery start to whine as they, as everything spools up and stuff. It's just, this does a very good job of capturing the essence of an airplane, the noise environment, just the general feel that you get from an aircraft. This actually does quite well. This actually covers that quite well, in my opinion. Now, I talked about the weather radar. Unfortunately, that doesn't work in FSX Steam Edition for me. It's a shame, but you can actually replace that with something else if you wish to. Check their support forums for more information on that. Now, talking a little bit about the engines. As I said, the start and stop procedure is a little bit different for these. After you started the engines, you can see the stop blocks are still engaged. In order to actually release the stop blocks and actually be able to take off and, taxi the airplane, you actually have to put the airplane into reverse for a second in order to remove the stop blocks, as you can see here. If you put the airplane into reverse for a second and then back to idle, you will see the stop blocks have unlocked, which means now I actually have the full range of travel for my throttle ranges. Oh, my throttle levers, I should say. Other than that, the airplane flies pretty well. I'm actually going to start taxiing out here, because I do want to go flying and show you some stuff. Let's throttle up a little bit here. You can see this is going to be a rather quick review, so this is not an hour or 2 hour long monster as I usually do, because as I said, there's not a whole lot to cover there, and I like this airplane. I like this airplane a lot. I like all of their stuff now, all the recent stuff they've done. I like this one, I like the MU2, I'm probably going to love the Lear 35, so there's that. Flysimware doing good stuff. Continuing to talk a little bit about the airplane itself, it handles very nicely, it handles very direct. It's a very fast airplane, it climbs very well, it cruises very well, it descends and generally just flies like it should. There's no real surprises or anything like that here. It behaves like you would expect it to behave. Unfortunately, I cannot really speak much about, again, how quote-unquote realistic this behavior is, because I've never flown one of these airplanes before, but at least to me it feels pretty good. It feels very, very nice. It feels the price, if you know what I mean. It feels like you would expect a heavier turboprop airplane to feel. That's it. Which, the engines, however, unlike its King Air brothers and sisters, the engines react a little bit more directly than they do in the PT6. That's also due to them being geared engines. Now, for the takeoff procedure itself, you don't really have to do much other than to put your condition levers to flight and take off, which means over here. As you will see, the prop RPM will increase. As I said, they also control the engine and prop RPM here. This will go up. And then, as we move the throttle forward, you can see the torque also rising, finally. Although I don't want to over-torque it. Might happen here. Just a second. Let's be careful. As I said, we're on light load. We're a full tank, but no passengers, so we should be airborne pretty quickly. I expect it to be before 100 knots. Now, the airplane actually is surprisingly short field capable, funnily enough. You can actually get this thing stopped on pretty short runways, shorter than you might expect, actually. Which I think is pretty impressive, considering the size and weight of this airplane. So, she's actually capable of doing some quite interesting things here and there. So, it makes it quite interesting, in my opinion. Now, as I said, she handles nice, she flies nice. There's not really a whole lot else about to say about this. I would have to fly the real airplane to actually know whether this is true to real life or not, but I would assume it is. Flysimware usually do a pretty good job when it comes to covering, flight dynamics and that kind of stuff. They've always done a pretty good job of that, so... Just gonna fly around a little bit, show you the airplane off in motion, show you a little bit. As you can see, the instrumentation, the animation, everything is super smooth. There's nothing here that's actually like jerky or anything like that. The performance of the airplane itself is very good. It's very light on frames, for me anyway. There's nothing in here which strains performance at all. Even if you use the Flight 1 GTN, just nothing. I mean, I'm getting my steady frames here, no problem at all whatsoever. And that's another good thing that I like about Flysimware. They sacrifice a little bit of eye candy for performance, and I am totally okay with that. If all of their stuff is always going to look like this, or the MU2, and runs as well as this does, then by all means go ahead. Simple as that. If you can make a product run this good while still looking this good, then hey, you know, you got my sale, definitely. So I really appreciate it, and I really like it that way. As I said, I prefer substance over style. I prefer systems over visuals. I'm not an eye candy person personally, which is evidenced by my very bland looking flight simulator. But that's, you know, that's what you get. I told you that from the start. Don't ever expect eye candy from me. That's not what you get. Trying to think of what else to say about this airplane really, but I don't think there is too much more here that I could cover potentially. Other than maybe that Flysimware themselves as a developer, they have excellent support, they're really nice guys. They have their support forums over at askthim.com. There's a link to that on their home site, on their homepage. So yeah, awesome developer, really nice guys, really friendly folks. And they actually started to improve significantly. I mean, if you look back at what they started out with, you know, these weird rocket cars and skydivers and all that kind of stuff, and wingsuits and weird things like that. And if you look at where they are now, where they do this or the MU2 or the Learjet, they started to improve. So they're actually a very nice example of how a developer can, and in my opinion should, progress when it comes to payware. So their stuff has continuously gotten better. The MU2 is a step up from this, and the Learjet is a step up from the MU2, I would assume. I haven't tried it yet. I don't think it's out yet, unfortunately, but yeah. Flysimware, another developer I would gladly give my money to as soon as they release something new, if the airplane in question actually interests me. So yeah, there's not really much else to say about those guys. As we come around again, where's the runway? Oh, it's over here, so let's actually get the power down a little bit and start our descent. If I would give a TLDR or a conclusion on this airplane, then I would say that $34.99 US is definitely worth the price. If you are interested in a twin turboprop like this, if you're interested in something different for a change, then yes, absolutely. To me, this airplane was definitely worth the money. I got my money's worth out of it. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it a great deal. I love flying around in it, especially on, again, a service like FS Economy. This makes a lot of fun, makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You can't really go wrong with it. It's one of those things that's like, yeah, if you like this style of airplane, if you like, or if you can see past the, maybe not so perfect visuals, if you can see past the maybe not so perfect textures and modeling work, then this is definitely for you, you know. If you're spoiled by Tornado and other developers that do eye candy without substance, then maybe this is not for you. But it depends on what crowd you belong to, basically. Yeah, I can't really say much negative things about it that I haven't said already, other than tiny bit more better texture work, tiny bit more better modeling work, and then you have a solid product. The sounds themselves, I mean, here's the problem: the sounds, they are annoying as hell, but the problem is they are annoying as hell in the real airplane as well, so I can't really fault anybody for that other than Cessna or Garrett for actually making this airplane in the first place, so there's that, you know. It unfortunately does sound like that in real life too, so not really much you can do. Which is a testament. I mean, they stuck true with it. They didn't actually change the sounds around, they didn't change anything, so yeah, might as well. Might as well. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what matters, you know. You want to have a as close to real life as possible recreation or approximation of an airplane, and this is pretty much what you're getting with this product. So, yeah. They, no harm, no foul there, in my opinion. As we're probably gonna botch this landing, but hey, whatever. This is just a video. Doesn't really matter. Also, you can see height pressure coming on as we deploy the gear, hydraulic pressure, as we deploy gear and flaps here. So yeah, everything you would expect to illuminate or everything that you would expect to function actually functions. There's nothing in here that doesn't work in some capacity or some fashion. Really, as I said, the only thing that will not work if you're on Prepare 3D or the FSX Steam Edition is going to be the weather radar. Everything else in here functions. It's a complete simulation of a Cessna 441, engines included, which is, in my opinion, probably the heart of this airplane. That's the engine simulation, because it's actually quite good. If you've ever flown, as I said, the PMDG J41, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to geared turboprops and the way they behave, and that they're sometimes a little bit strange and a little bit weird in the way that you have to treat them. And as you can see, I move the throttle and I get a pretty much immediate response. There's no noticeable lag on the engines, unlike a PT6, which sometimes can lag behind a little bit. The flight characteristics themselves in slow flight are also pretty smooth. It's getting quite soft, as you would expect from an airplane like this. You get quite soft control surfaces, but that's also due to me being a little bit slow, so that's perfectly fine. Yeah, other than that, conclusion, for the money they're asking, for the price they're asking, it's good. It's good. It's pretty good. It's not 10 out of 10, but pretty good. So it's at least an 8. If I would give scores, which I don't, by the way. Don't actually take me serious on that. So yeah, Flysimware Cessna 441 Conquest II. Available for $34.99 US from their website or any retailer of your choice, whether it's Sim Market, Flight Sim Store, yada yada yada, you know, the usual drill. Service Pack 2, Acceleration, Steam Edition, all 3 versions of Prepare 3D, 5 repaints, 29-page manual. Repaint kit can be downloaded from their website. I will land this airplane now, and then I will show you the engine shutdown procedure, because I think that's actually worth showing off and actually worth mentioning. Let's just try to not botch the landing. Let's keep this actually going here smoothly, hopefully. Idle, let's sit her down. Very nice, very smoothly. As you can see, she flies very nice. Nothing here. Throw the airplane into reverse. A little bit of wheel braking. And also make sure you lower the condition levers down to start and taxi again, so you don't shoot around like a crazy person. Can we make that turn off? Yeah, we can. Alright, here we go. Coming in now. Nice and smooth. And then I never do my flights per manual or anything like that, or per procedure, just because I can't be bothered for a review. I just want to show off the airplane itself. And that's pretty much what I've done here. Yeah, not really sure what I should be talking about, other than I quite like it. I think it's worth the money. I think it's quite good. If Flysimware keep doing what they do right now, then they have a bright future ahead of them. If they keep developing interesting airplanes like this, because this is not something you usually see. This is a different airplane. This is an interesting airplane. This is a quite odd airplane. This is out of the norm. So thumbs up for that, definitely. I like it when developers do that, because I like these weird little airplanes that not many people know about. I'm a fan of that stuff, so there's that. So, now, coming to a halt here. Coming to a stop. Alright there. Actually put the puck brake on. Now, in order to shut the engines down again, you obviously want to engage the stop locks, or the start locks. I keep the two confused. In order to do that, as soon as you cut the fuel to the engine, as soon as you shut the engine down, you have to put the engine into reverse again for the locks to come on. As demonstrated, I will shut the engine. I will shut the fuel to the engine. I will put it in reverse, and there you have 2 locked indications now, which means the engines are locked and can be started again. And then when you're done with that, you go ahead and you turn off your avionics, your gyro, and your battery, and then it's shut down. My name's been Super Sea Goblin, and I will see you next time.